Now, getting back to currency for a minute here, one of the most common conversations that I have on this channel is the future of world reserve currency. In a number of angles that we hit this, like, what's the duration that the American dollar has left? I have guests on that think it's as short as a decade. I have guests on that say, look, this is growing pains. The American empire is still in its adolescence. There's another, quite maybe a couple generations to go still. What happens next is the other part of the conversation. Do we go towards just a multipolar world where we transact a few different ways and countries have optionality? Maybe that's what Saudi Arabia is looking for, probably exactly what they're looking for. But take on the future health of the US dollar as maybe not the reserve currency, but the trade currency. Bob, any thoughts?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's a good way to put it. The concern I have is what happens immediately. Every country in history that has had the world's reserve currency had it for about 4 generations, about 80 years. And of course, we've had it for exactly 80 years. So as the world's reserve currency, the dollar is collapsing. However, because it's still the most important instrument, it will be a trade union for a significant time in the future. It'll do the same thing that the British pound did, okay? My wife was British, and they were still on rations until 1954, but the British pound still had some value, okay? So I think the US dollar will have value, but clearly many of the countries, in reaction to the sanctions put on by the United States, have started doing trading in their own currencies. And BRICS is absolutely working on some kind of agreed currency. It won't be the world's reserve currency, but they're trying to come up with something. And I agree with Ray Dalio. If you don't understand gold, you don't understand economics. If you don't own gold, okay, you don't understand what's going on. Gold is going to be a part of the financial future, period. The United States has destroyed the value of the dollar, even though it will still trade. Should Japan crash the bond market, the costs of inflation in the United States and Canada is going to go through the roof.
Quick break here, guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Copernico Metals. Now, regular viewers of my channel will be familiar with the entrepreneur behind Copernico. His name is Ivan Bebek. Now, although a young man in this business, Ivan's already created tremendous value for his shareholders in the past, namely with Caden Resources, which he sold to Agnico Eagle, and Keegan Resources, which became a mine now owned by Galiano Gold. Now, Ivan has surrounded himself with expertise from BHP, Newmont, and Barrick on his board at Copernico Metals. Check out copernicometals.com. Now back to the interview. Shane, any follow-up thoughts on that?
I agree, Bob. I do believe that going forward, the US dollar will continue to be that sort of main currency, but over time, the BRICS currencies will begin to trade on their own a little bit, and gold will form some part of that. Obviously, because the BRICS currencies are 7 or 8 countries together, they will need some sort of central tenement to work against. And I believe that gold could be part of that because it has a centralized value for all the countries. So it might be a suite of these countries with gold backed around that. So I do believe that that is something that is very viable in the future, in the near future, as an alternative.
Yeah. And the evidence of that is, I guess, the central bank gold buying. I mean, if you don't know what's around the corner, you want to have the lifeboat handy, right? Which is the role that gold plays. That's where you go when you don't know what's next. You take the asset, the only asset that is not somebody else's liability, and doesn't expose you to any counterparty risk, which is what you want in a moment of a crisis. But, so sounds like we're all readers of Dalio. The ingredients that you need to see during the declining sunset years of an empire, there's 3 of them, right? You need the financial insolvency of the state. we can probably tick that box now. We need to borrow just to pay the interest on the money we borrowed. That's the debt spiral, and that tends to just go one direction. The second is the internal conflicts. People can no longer agree on anything. Small issues become big issues, and there's no more cultural alignment within the country. So you have massive disorder financially and culturally, but you can maintain that system of disorder for a long time until you need a third party to challenge the existing world order. You need somebody who's strong enough to raise a flag and say to the world, world trade, say, look, we got a better way. Things aren't going so well with the old empire. We should do trade on our terms now. Now, maybe that's the challenge that the BRICS is presenting, but the BRICS has a lot of issues because they're ideologically different from each other. They're looking for alignment against the global superpower, but, culturally, politically, they're not aligned at all. And so do you see that challenge present? Maybe I'm misjudging the strength and alignment of the BRICS nations. Let me know if you think so. But do you see that external competitor present, and how would you identify and describe? Shane, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I would see it present. I would see it as not as strong like you a little bit, Jay. It's beginning to grow, but it's not there yet. There's, but I believe it'll actually happen because of more of the demise of the US rather than the coming together of the others. We're heading into a very volatile election period now in the US. We have two, I would say, not great candidates for the US. And who knows what'll happen if one candidate doesn't agree with the others, or there's some issues around voting or some challenges with voting. We had that in the last couple of elections, and that could go down could cause a lot of issues in the US. And all these kind of, in my opinion, people begin to lose faith in the US. You have the debt, you have poor leaders who are going ahead. If you remember in the book of the demise of the Roman Empire, it came down to empires, their generals or their leaders or their leader got worse and worse over time. They began to start trusting, lack of trust in their own institutions, and that caused an internal conflict, which led other groups, allowed them into that realm. And I see that as more of a US demise, and allowing the other groups to come up. At this stage, US is very strong. It's a very powerful nation. But as it begins to unravel, the debt, political instability, I see that more opportunity for others to rise up. I don't know if we're there yet, but we will be fairly soon, I think.